get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to The Point on GB News with me, Andrew Pierce and Dawn Neeson. Here's what's coming up.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately.
Donald Trump has given a defiant address to his supporters in Florida after becoming the first ex-US president to face a criminal trial. The former US president pleaded not guilty to 34 charges, but warned in his speech at Mar-a-Lago that the case against him is politically motivated. But do you agree? Is there a witch hunt against Mr. Trump?
Good question. And it's official, she is to be Queen Camilla. Buckingham Palace have confirmed that on those nice invitations for the coronation in May. Prince George is going to be one of the pages. We're asking a rather provocative question. Would you curtsy to Queen Camilla or bow?
Ooh, right, OK. And trans women could be barred from female-only spaces as the government considers amending the Equality Act to define sex as biological. Is this a step in the right direction, though?
And the Home Secretary, she's right in the thick of that battle, isn't she, over Stop the Boat, Suella Braverman, but she's facing a fight with a neighbouring MP to who's going to represent a new constituency. If she loses, what happens to Stop the Boats?
Oh, it's going to be a fun-packed, exciting show. There's so much coming up, Andrew. I don't know how I'm going to fit it all in.
Well managed, though. And we're going to go to the news now with...
Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning and thank you very much. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Donald Trump says the only crime he has committed is fearlessly defending his nation against those who seek to destroy it. The former president has been indicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels during his 2016 election campaign. He's pleaded not guilty to all criminal charges in New York. Trump has claimed he's a victim of election interference.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately. Our elections were like those of a third world country, and now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country.
A tick-borne virus which can cause meningitis has been detected by health officials in the UK. The UK Health Security Agency has found 3 possible cases of the virus in England since 2019, with the first confirmed case in Yorkshire last year. The infection can be asymptomatic and cause illnesses ranging from mild to severe, such as encephalitis, where the brain swells to deadly levels. Invitations to the King's coronation will feature the title of Queen Camilla for the first time. Camilla will be formally crowned alongside the new King, marking the transition from her previous title of Queen Consort, which she used since the late Queen's death. The invite to Abbey Church of Westminster on the 6th of May will be sent to more than 2,000 guests. US President Joe Biden has confirmed he won't be attending, represented instead by his wife, First Lady Jill Biden. And some breaking news now for you. Police Scotland have said a 58-year-old man has been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. We'll bring you more on that breaking news story as we get it. Well, TV, online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's over to Dawn.
Just hours after leaving his fingerprints, rather orange fingerprints, you would say, in a Manhattan courthouse, former US President Donald Trump, he says the only crime he's committed, God love him, is to defend the nation from those who are seeking to destroy it.
Ooh, in a speech at his Mar-a-Lago Palm Beach home, the former president claimed he's a victim of election interference. Trump called the case fake after pleading not guilty to 34 felony charges.
Well, after a day of drama and history here in New York, President Trump headed straight from the courtroom to the airport and straight to Florida, to his residence at Mar-a-Lago, where he addressed his supporters and members of the press late last night. And in that, he talked about how he thought the country was going to hell in a defiant message. He said that the United States was a laughingstock and again issued a full denial of the allegations against him. This is a man facing 34 separate charges of breaking the law. He talked about how his political opponents were taking not just to destroy him, but indeed to destroy the nation. And he also reiterated those personal attacks, not least of all on the Manhattan District Attorney, who is leading this indictment against him, but also the judge, saying that he was a Trump-hating judge from a Trump-hating family. Now, we know a lot more details about the crimes that Donald Trump is now being alleged to have committed, including not just that payment and the misreporting of it around the former porn star Stormy Daniels, but also 2 other payments, another one to a person that's alleged he had an affair with, and to a man who used to work on a doorman, if you like, at one of Trump's residence, who claimed that he had fathered a child outside of marriage. Now, as I say, the former president has denied all of this, though he is the first former or current president ever to have been arrested and to face a criminal court case. He was also warned, though, by the judge yesterday to refrain from making statements that are likely to incite violence or civil unrest, though it must be said some of the statements he made last night continue to be personal attacks, as I say, on the judge and on the judge's family. Where do we go from next? Well, we're just going to have to wait, because the next date set in this trial is not until December. It is entirely possible that will be pushed back. And all this while Donald Trump also waits on other legal cases that could well be taken against him in the months ahead. Though politically at the moment, he does seem to be coming out quite well from this. Not only has his Trump organization raised millions of dollars in donations in the last week alone, but he has also surged in the polls amongst Republican voters. So all in all, as I say, an extraordinary 48 hours in American politics, one that could yet define the US presidential race, but one in which President Trump in a courtroom yesterday looked pretty angry, pretty daunted at times, but at the same time, a very defiant Donald Trump who seems determined to fight all these allegations, all these criminal charges against him.
Wow. Well, that was GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey in New York explaining what has happened overnight. But joining us now to explain even further is Professor of US Politics at the University College Dublin, Scott Lucas. Good morning, Scott.
Very good morning to you both.
Thank you for joining us. I guess you've been up all night following what the hell's going on in America.
Well, you know what? When the circus keeps going, you don't step outside for a bit of popcorn. You just keep watching. I think it's important in the midst of that spectacle to get to the facts of what is a very important case. And Darren McCaffrey laid out some of it, but just to bring it all together, these 34 felony counts, they start with the falsifying of business records over the hush money to the porn star Stormy Daniels over Trump's alleged sexual encounters with her. That money was paid 11 days before the U.S. election in 2016. But what was really important and took this case wider was connecting it to, in the words of the prosecutors, Trump orchestrating a scheme to interfere in the 2016 election by suppressing information. So Darren referred to two other payments. A Trump Tower doorman was paid $30,000 in the autumn of 2015 because he claimed Trump had had a child out of wedlock. And then, importantly, $150,000 was paid, allegedly at the orders of Trump directly, to the former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who says she had a 10-month affair with Donald Trump in 2006, 2007, only 18 months, by the way, after his marriage to Melania, and 4 months after the birth of their son, Barron. Why is all of that important? Because to falsify business records on itself could be a misdemeanor, but to falsify business records to cover up another potential crime, which is interference in the election, which would be a violation of state and federal election laws, that makes it a felony. So each of those 34 counts does carry a sentence of 1 to 4 years in prison if, big if, Donald Trump is convicted.
Can you explain something to me about the American psyche, or maybe the Republican Party psyche? Because I can't help thinking if this was happening in Britain and a Conservative leader was potentially up in court for falsifying business records, bribing a woman who he allegedly had an affair with. We know also there are further things coming down the line about apparently pressurising officials to find 11,000 votes in Georgia. Also, he seized classified documents before he left the White House, which he took to Mar-a-Lago. That, I would have thought, would have been the death of a political career here. But in America, he's surging ahead in the polls with the Republicans, and millions of dollars are pouring into his campaign coffers. Why do Americans think differently to the rest of us?
Well, you got to be careful with that millions of dollars and surging, and I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
There's a fundamental difference in the way that the systems operate in this case, which is in the UK, you wouldn't have this because the case would be sub judice. And when a case is sub judice, politicians, officials, MPs cannot speak about it in public. That's a fundamental of the British legal system. Now, Donald Trump is able to speak about the legal case while it's proceeding. So what does he do last night? He doesn't talk about the facts of the case. What he does is he attacks the legal system. He attacks the district attorney, Alvin Bragg. He attacks the district attorney's wife. He attacks the judge in the case. He attacks the judge's wife, the judge's daughter. He attacks the prosecutors. He attacks the grand jury. He attacks the media, of course, and Democrats. Some Americans are codependent on Donald Trump. They are entrenched in that type of rhetoric. They're entrenched in that type of Trump versus the system. But there are a lot of Americans that do not want to see Donald Trump take down the American system, whether it's the legal system or the political system. So he will have some supporters, but there will be other supporters of people like Ron DeSantis, who will run for president, Mike Pence, who will run for president, Nikki Haley. So to say that this legal process should be the hostage of Donald Trump's rhetoric in the campaign, absolutely the wrong way to look at it. Let the legal process play out, and then let Trump's campaign play out in parallel. Don't bring the two together.
Do you buy do you subscribe to the theory for some people that this is a Democrat plot because they actually want to see Donald Trump on the Republican ticket in the next presidential race because they think he's easy to beat?
Well, no, the facts, and you stick with the facts, bear out that that is not the case. This case has been an investigation ever since it was revealed in 2018, while Donald Trump was still president, that he had paid hush money, allegedly, to Stormy Daniels and to Karen McDougal. This case has been investigated by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office since 2019 by Trump's predecessor, Cyrus Vance. The reason why the case was rejuvenated last year had nothing to do with Trump running for president. It is that Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, with new evidence coming into the office, ordered a review of that evidence. They went back to the witness statements. They looked at all of that very carefully. And importantly, and it is very important, in the autumn of last year, the Trump organization was convicted on both civil and criminal charges over business malpractice. And so that sense that Trump was immune, that he could be what he called Teflon Don and escape accountability, that was gone. And that's when you saw the move made to the grand jury in January of this year.
Scott, where do you see this? Where is this going to end, in your view? Could he end up in prison?
Well, first of all, yeah, he could in theory. Now, in practice, let's play this out. First of all, that was millions of dollars you had referred to. They're not going to Trump's campaign. Those millions of dollars are going to pay his lawyers. Right. So the idea that it's boosting the campaign, a bit deceptive. Now, what happens here is we have a bit of a lull because the next court hearing is not until December. Because what happens is the prosecution shows its evidence to the defense team, the process of discovery. The defense team will consider motions to try to file to have the case dismissed. The judge takes that under advisement, and then he makes his decision on December whether we go to trial. If the trial proceeds, the prosecution wants it in January of 2024. Trump's team don't want it until the spring of 2024, but even then, it would be in the midst of the Republican primaries for president. So I think what we get is Trump continuing to try to gaslight, to try to say, it's not me, I'm the victim, blame everyone else. But we get sort of a lull in this case, while the others we have to then keep an eye on. That is the grand jury case in Georgia over Trump's alleged election interference. That is the investigation of Trump's role, if he had a role, in the Capitol attack. And it's the investigation of Trump moving documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago and then covering it up.
That's
Scott Lucas.
Scott Lucas, yeah. Fascinating stuff. Could end up in prison.
Well, the thing is, if he ends up in prison and still gets elected as president, there's nothing legally standing against that. He could pardon himself.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone thinking this through?
Yeah.
Right. We have some breaking news just in. The husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is understood to have been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances.
Pete Murrell, he's 58. He was chief executive of the Scottish National Party. He met Nicola Sturgeon when he was chief executive of the Scottish National Party. He's been chief executive for about 25 years. He was taken into police custody this morning. This is over allegations some money intended for campaigning was used for different purposes, and he also gave a loan to the Scottish National Party, which he didn't declare in the ways he should have, in breach of electoral law. We're going to bring you more coverage on GB News as the day goes by, but that's a big story. And do you know what, Dawn? I thought the police investigation ongoing was the real reason Sturgeon stood down.
That she stood down. I thought she was going to go and learn how to drive or something or other.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes, absolutely. OK, so there will be more coming up on that soon. Right, and Conservative Party members in the newly created seat of Fareham and Waterlooville in Hampshire will vote today on which MP they want to represent the constituency. The decision is currently torn between Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, and Flick Drummond, another Tory MP.
And this is fascinating because there are boundary changes, so both their seats are disappearing. You'd think Suella Braverman, as the Home Secretary, who's taking the Stop the Boats legislation through the Commons, would be a shoo-in. But actually, often Tory associations quite like the quiet backbencher who's around the whole time doing lots of constituency work, rather than the Cabinet Minister who's grandstanding on the political stage nationally.
She is very divisive, isn't she?
She is.
Right. Well, joining
us...
her. Feisty. I admire a woman who gets to the top in the industry. Politically, it's you know, it doesn't matter what you think of her. She's got to the top, and she is female, and obviously she's of colour. Yeah. So she's done an amazing job. Right. Well, joining us now from Fareham is GB News political reporter Olivia Utley. Hello, Olivia.
Hello, Bev. Yes, I'm here in Fareham, and as Andrew said there, it is by no means certain that Suella Braverman is going to win this new constituency. Fareham is quite a leafy town, it's quite genteel, it's more well-to-do than you might expect. It's pretty much considered a home counties constituency. So some of the red meat from Suella Braverman, the Rwanda policy, for instance, doesn't necessarily go down particularly well amongst Conservatives here. And on the other side is Flick Drummond, who is a who is a Liberal Conservative MP, a wet Conservative MP to her opponents. And she has been a champion backbencher ever since she was first elected. She is very keen on local causes. Now, Flick Drummond has said that she only wants to contest the constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville. Meanwhile, Suella Braverman has put down second and third preferences. She will try and fight the nearby constituency of Hamble Valley up against the 2019 intake MP if she fails to win this one. And if she fails to win that one, she's got her eyes set on Windsor. But Suella Braverman, she's a talented politician. She's feisty, as you said, but she isn't particularly charming to local constituents. That's something that we've heard on the ground here. So it might not be an easy win for her at all.
Fascinating. That's Olivia Utley, and we will keep you up to date, of course. That's our political reporter in Fareham. And it isn't a shoo-in, because I've seen it so often. Norman Lamont, who'd been a chancellor, his constituency disappeared in the run-up to the 1997 election. There was a battle with a backbench non-entity whose name I've long forgotten. And the backbench non-entity got the constituency. Norman Lamont out.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not always helpful to
I'd be
have
sorry
those
to see her go, actually, because I think I'm a big fan of Stop the Boats. Not the most perfect policy, but it's a flipping attempt to sort the boats out.
Look, she's having a go, and as I said, politically, I admire a woman that achieves amazing things in politics. It's not an easy arena to be in. However, I must admit, some of her rhetoric sometimes does make me a bit nervous.
Yeah,
she hasn't got a great turn of phrase.
As Olivia said, she's not always very good with the local constituency party,
No.
and that's a really important part. Now, it's a month to go. Have you had your invitation? Have you had yours?
Of course, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
It's on my phone right now. Where's yours?
It's the first
no,
yes.
you haven't.
No, sorry. It's the first coronation in this country since 1953, the coronation of King Charles and Queen Camilla. It's been printed on recycled paper, of course it has. They've been officially released.
Right, OK, I thought they were emailing them out to save... In any case, I would rather...
That was save the date.
I would... Oh, right, OK, I would rather have the old-school stiffy you put on the mantelpiece.
Exactly.
Right, in any case, the invitations include the first reference to Queen Camilla, and details about the role Charles' grandchildren include a future King George, probably very photogenic little boy, isn't he?
Yeah, lovely.
Will play on the big day.
Well, let's talk to former royal correspondent and royal expert indeed, and great friend of this programme, Michael Cole. Michael, morning to you. We've always known, haven't we, that it's always been the wish of the Charles that Camilla will be Queen. It's there in black and white now. She will not be Queen Consort after the coronation. She will be Queen. She'll be Her Majesty the Queen, and that's how Charles wanted it.
Exactly. This is an extraordinary invitation in many ways. Usually, as Dawn was alluding to it, I mean, royal invitations were on white pasteboard, known as a stiffy, with the Queen's cipher in gold and copperplate handwriting on it, inviting you to the great event. Here, what have we got? If you have a look at it, it's a little bit Laura Ashley 1975 by Hallmark cards. And there at the bottom, you can't quite see it, is resplendent, just below the fold there, the Green Man. And of course, he's a pagan symbol. I'm sure at the Green Man pub near Royston, which I know reasonably well, they'll be celebrating that he's actually on the invitation. But you make the absolute key point, Andrew. Here it is, Queen Camilla. Now, I covered the wedding in 2005 of the then Prince Charles and Mrs. Parker Bowles, and Clarence House, his own office, put out a statement saying that in the event that he became king and she would not become queen, that she would be known as Princess Consort. Well, that has all changed because Her Majesty the Queen did say it was her sincere wish that upon Charles's succession that Camilla will be known as Queen. That was the Queen's last great gift to her elder son. And there we are. We see them together, completely content, beautiful in blue, and getting ready for the great day. And I think it's worth saying that May the 6th is a day of huge destiny. Now, would you really believe this?
Mm.
Edward VII, who was Prince Charles's great-great-grandfather, he died on May the 6th, 1910. And shortly before he died, Queen Alexandra allowed his mistress-in-chief, Mrs. Alice Keppel, in to see him. And Mrs. Alice Keppel was in grief and she was ushered out of the palace almost shrieking. Well, she was the great-grandmother of Camilla Shand, who became Mrs. Parker Bowles, who is going to be our new queen.
You couldn't make it up.
You couldn't. A romantic novelist wouldn't dare to go there. And at the same time, from the political side of it, which I know you're interested in, Andrew, more than anybody, Herbert Asquith, as the king died, witnessed Halley's Comet streaking across a black sky. Well, come on, for drama, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Michael, do you think that people will ever forget the tapes? I'm not going to go into details, quite early in the morning, and the controversy around the whole Princess Diana issue. Do you think there will always be a level of resentment aimed at Camilla?
Quite a large level, actually. Memories are short, but a lot of people do not approve of what happened. Diana was only 19 when she was engaged, barely 20 when she was married. She gave birth to two children. She did her patriotic duty. She was there within the royal family for 15 years, and she was not used properly, and a lot of people resent it. A lot of people miss her, including me. Think she was a wonderful person. She wasn't perfect, but none of us is. She didn't pretend to be a saint, but she was a terrific person. And there's tremendous sadness about it all. And a lot of people will remember the third person in the marriage, Mrs. Parker Bowles, is now going to be the Queen. Well, forgiveness is a wonderful thing, and the people of this country and the world are very forgiving, and I'm quite sure that they'll want this new reign to go very well. And to be fair, the King and the Queen Consort have not put a foot wrong. He's been playing a great game since he took over. I think he's taking good advice and listening to it for once. And of course, we wish them well. But I don't think the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, will be scrubbed out of people's memory. Quite the reverse. And I think she should be remembered, and I hope she is properly recalled at the appropriate times.
Michael, just quickly, one final question. Do we think Harry and William will ever be able to move on? Just quickly, sorry, I have to ask.
Dawn, they ought to be. They're two brothers. It would upset Diana tremendously to think of them being at loggerheads. What they ought to do is actually meet at that Green Man pub, which is about halfway between Sandringham and London, and sort it out between them, like ordinary families do. It's a terrible thing to see brothers fighting. It's one of the worst things you can see. So they should reconcile for the sake of their mother and for the sake of their father.
All right, that's Michael Cole, Royal Expert. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
And the question we're asking GB News viewers and listeners, would you, if you met the Queen, not Queen Consort, would you curtsy to Camilla, or would you bow to her? I wonder. You know what to do? Email to GB News.
Yeah.
What is it?
GBnews at GBviews at GBnews.
We get there in the end.
Wrong teeth in this morning.
Still to come, we're going to bring you the latest development in Scotland, where a remarkable story. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, she only stood down as First Minister last week. Pete Murrell, who was Chief Executive of the SNP, has been arrested. This is To The Point on GB News. Understood to have been arrested.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to The Point on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Dawn Neeson.
Right, breaking news in the last hour. The husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is understood to have been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. Peter Murrell, who's 58, was taken into police custody this morning, and we'll bring you all the very latest on GB News, so don't go anywhere.
That is an extraordinary story.
Very much.
And another extraordinary story. That man, Donald Trump, defiant with his supporters in Florida. He's made history, the first ex-president to face a criminal trial. He's pleaded not guilty to 34 charges. He says it's politically motivated. Is it a witch hunt against Mr. Trump?
It's very exciting, isn't it? And the coronation of King Charles, the invites are out, and they say Queen Camilla, officially used for the first time. But it also reveals, actually, it's quite sweet, that George is serving as one of the 8 pages one, and that's lovely, cute little kid. But is it Queen Camilla? Would you bow or curtsy to Queen Camilla?
There we are, very good question. And it's a huge political fight for the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. I'm not talking about her noble attempt to stop the boats out, but she's fighting to hold on to her parliamentary seat. Boundary changes mean she's up against a neighbouring MP. The battle will be salted tonight. You'd think as Home Secretary it'd be a shoo-in, but it's not as close. It's much closer than people think.
Right, let us know all your thoughts on the talking subjects. And now we have to go straight to the news. The talking points, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, your morning news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Dawn, thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. We start with that breaking news from this last hour. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is understood to have been arrested. It's believed Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into the funding and finances of the SNP. Police Scotland has confirmed a 58-year-old man is in custody and search is being carried out at a number of properties. Donald Trump says the only crime that he's committed is fearlessly defending his nation against those who seek to destroy it. The former US president has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments during his 2016 election campaign. He claims he's a victim of election interference.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately. Our elections were like those of a third world country, and now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country.
Associate Professor of American History Kevin Yule says this will only aid Trump's chances of re-election in 2024.
And this is what he thrives on. This is what he has always thrived on. So when he's in battle, that means his supporters are rallied. That means he becomes more popular at the polls. It's difficult not to see this as a plot to get Trump re-elected in some ways. Perhaps not as president, but certainly I think he's in a good position now to stand for the Republican Party in 2024.
A school leaders' union has overwhelmingly rejected a pay offer from the government. 9 in 10 members of the National Association of Head Teachers voted against the deal and will now discuss further possible strike action. It's as teachers in England voted to strike this month and next after rejecting a 4.3% pay rise. Members from the National Education Union will walk out on the 27th of April and the 2nd of May. Environment Agency workers are warning communities, waters and wildlife will be put at risk this month when they strike over pay. Unison says thousands of its members in England, including those that work on coastal sea defences and tackle water pollution, will walk out from the 14th up until the 17th of April. It's accusing the government of refusing to allow the agency to improve a pay rise of 2%. A tick-borne virus which can cause meningitis has been detected by health officials in the UK. The UK Health Security Agency has found 3 possible cases of the virus in England since 2019, with the first confirmed case in Yorkshire last year. The infection can be asymptomatic and cause illnesses ranging from mild to severe, such as encephalitis, where the brain swells to deadly levels. More people are using bus services after the £2 bus cap was introduced. Transport Focus surveyed more than 1,000 people and found over 10% of those asked are using the bus more often. More than 40% said bus journeys are replacing trips they would have previously made by car. The cap, which was originally planned to end in March, has been extended until June. Labour has vowed to fix the issue of fly tipping, as research shows there's almost 3,000 incidents of dumped waste per day in England. The party has pledged to clean up Britain, as government data shows cases of dumped rubbish has increased by 1/3 over the last 13 years under the Conservative Party. Shadow Secretary of State for Justice Steve Reed says communities deserve to feel proud of where they live.
Now 3,000 reports every single day, for goodness sake, in this country of rubbish dumped on our streets, nothing happening about it. So Labour is proposing to set up clean-up squads so that those who make the mess will clear up the mess. And people will understand that is just fairness, but it's also a deterrent for other people who are tempted to get out on the streets and junk their rubbish rather than taking it to the dump themselves or organising for it to be picked up. It's simply not fair on families living in communities that they deserve to feel proud of.
And invitations to the King's coronation will feature the title of Queen Camilla for the first time. Camilla will be formally crowned alongside the new king, marking the transition from her previous title of Queen Consort, which she's used since the late Queen's death. The invite to Abbey Church of Westminster on the 6th of May will be sent to more than 2,000 guests. US President Joe Biden has confirmed he will not be attending, represented instead by First Lady Jill Biden. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Andrew and Dawn.
All right, news just in. The husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is understood to have been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances.
Now, this is an absolutely seismic story because Pete Murrell, Sturgeon's husband, was chief executive of the Scottish National Party for about 25 years. They met through their work in the Scottish National Party. She only resigned as First Minister, 10 days ago, a week ago?
I think, yeah.
And I thought at the time, I wonder if this ongoing police investigation has anything to do with it. Here we are. He's now being questioned by the police, that we know, in a police station in Scotland.
Yes, I think you could kind of see it coming, and I just wonder if Nicola Sturgeon could as well. Mr Murrell stepped down as chief executive during the recent leadership campaign, and we will bring you more coverage on GB News as the day goes on.
Yeah, now, just hours after leaving his fingerprints, I suspect they were orange, putting all that fake tan on.
You're obsessed with him being orange.
I know, in a Manhattan courthouse. Donald Trump, he was in a defiant mood. Of course he was. When he spoke to his supporters at Mar-a-Lago, that's his place in Florida, he said the only crime he's ever committed is to defend the nation from those who seek to destroy it. Remember, he denied 34 different charges in that courtroom.
He really came out fighting as well, and the judge was going like, just remember what you're saying and try not to say too much, and he instantly went out and ranted for 25 minutes. OK, this speech at Mar-a-Lago, in his Palm Beach home, the former president claimed he is a victim of election interference. Trump called the case fake, a bit like his tan, after pleading not guilty to 34 felony charges. Now, joining us for more on this is the spokesman for Republicans overseas, Jennifer Ewing. Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Right, Jennifer, what do you make of the happenings overnight? It's been absolutely fascinating for us here. I mean, we're used to British politics being a bit mad, but obviously the Americans are really going for it this morning, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing to say is there were no major surprises with regards to the indictment. And the second thing is how many strange bedfellows are being created. And by that, I mean people who are not even Trump supporters. And in many cases, strong Trump opponents like Cuomo or Dershowitz, Mitt Romney, who have come out and said, while they don't support Trump as a candidate, this case is weak and it's wrong, and it's definitely from a DA who has a political agenda. Because not only would this not be happening to someone else, I don't think this would be happening to Trump if he hadn't decided to run again in 2024, because the federal prosecutors have passed on bringing these charges forward. And in fact, the DA, Alvin Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance, also passed on bringing these charges. So you have to ask, why now?
The DA who's brought it, the aptly named Bragg, he is, of course, a member of the Democratic Party. He's a political appointment, and he has a political ambition all of his own, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Of course he does. And depending on who you listen to, he sort of ran on the precipice of, I've tried, so many cases against the Trump family and I'll get him, that sort of thing. So he was very clear in his motivations with regards to how he feels about former President Trump.
You're a Republican. Do you think this is damaging the Republican Party internationally, turning it into, frankly, a bit of a laughingstock, a circus even?
Well, it's definitely a circus, that's true. But I'm not sure it's the Republicans' making of the circus. I think while this case is legally quite weak, it's politically genius, because what's happening, and I think the Democrats probably want this to happen, is they are stoking up the so-called Trump base, who, we can see already there's been, I think, since Thursday when this came out, $10 million of donations. 25% of those have been from new people. So what this does is this elevates Trump for the primary elections, right? And I think the Democrats are very comfortable running against Trump versus running against Ron DeSantis, who's the current governor of Florida. Ron DeSantis has a pretty good backing against a lot of Republicans. He can run 2 terms. He's done incredible things in Florida, and he's got less baggage. So I think the Republicans are going to vote for Republicans. The Democrats will vote for Biden or whoever their candidate is. What's really at play here are the swing voters. And Trump being dragged through the courts does not help with the swing voters at all. And the Democrats know that.
Fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating stuff.
Jennifer Ewing from Republicans Overseas, thanks for joining us. He's irrepressible. You can't.
He just comes. I just would love to say, how are you feeling now? Because he just comes out swinging the whole time, even having a go at the judge.
He just doesn't behave like normal politicians. Boris didn't behave like normal politicians. He did pretty well for so long, didn't he?
Yeah, I wonder if it's something to do with the messed up blonde hair. What do you reckon?
Exactly. Now, another big story, politically, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is at the heart, isn't she, of this Stop the Boats legislation, but she's got a big fight on her hands in her own constituency backyard. Her constituency is disappearing, so is one of the neighbouring MP. A new constituency is being created, Fareham and Waterloo, and it's being called the New Battle of Waterloo, because they decide tonight which one of them gets the seat. Dawn, you'd think it would be her, because she's the Home Secretary.
You would have thought so. I must admit, I've never heard of the other lady, but then why would I? But everyone has heard of Suella Braverman, and that is probably a problem because she is incredibly divisive.
Yeah. The other candidate against is Flick Drummond, who's another Tory MP, so the local Conservative Association will decide tonight. Somebody who knows these stories inside out is Lord Hayward, Lord Robert Hayward. Robert, I can call you Robert. Robert, former Tory MP, brilliant pollster. Robert, people listening would think, oh, it's going to be the Home Secretary for sure. She's high profile. She's doing her best on Stop the Boats. Who's ever heard of Flick Drummond? But sometimes constituency associations quite like the quiet, assiduous backbencher who gets on with it rather than the cabinet minister strutting his or her stuff on the national stage.
Absolutely, and you've always got these mixture of emotions. As you say, I've chaired a fair number of these selection meetings, and you get those people in the audience who want a good local constituency MP, and there are others who say, oh no, we want a cabinet minister as our candidate. So you will get the contrast this evening between the two candidates who, as you say, are brought together because of the revised boundaries that have been drawn for the next election.
Home Secretary loses this selection battle tonight, Robert. That would look very bad for her political authority if even local Tories don't want her. And would that impact on her ability to do her job as Home Secretary?
No, I don't think it would. And you've got the balance of the membership. You're not looking here at the balance of voters from one constituency or the other. You're looking at where the membership happens to come from and whether they are supporting which of the two candidates. And to be honest, I don't know where that balance actually lies. So it may well not look bad if the balance of the membership is in favour of Flick Drummond and they go for Flick Drummond. The interesting thing in Suella Braverman's case is that if she doesn't win tonight, and by the way, here's your quiz question for the day, do you know where the name Waterlooville actually comes from? But Suella Braverman could go for another constituency called Hamble Valley, which takes a large part of her existing constituency as well.
Robert, how much of this is going to come down to how good literally a constituency MP they are, and how much of the big policies that people, the boat policy and recently the grooming gang announcement that Suella made this week, what is going to sway things more?
In general, people vote for, although there is always a group of people who say, no, we want a cabinet minister. Most members want a candidate who is identifiable and serving their local constituency. So there are, within any audience, a balance of views, and it depends how that balance works out this evening as to who is likely to win. And
do you have a hunch?
Also... Sorry?
Sorry, no, carry on, Robert. I interrupted you. Carry on.
It's all right. I was going to say many of the people who vote will be voting on their experience with both the MPs over the last few years, because unlike a normal selection where the members are confronted by three people they may not know, they may have limited experience with. In this case, you've got two MPs and the members will therefore have known them for a period of time. I chaired Suella's selection originally in Fareham and met many of the members when they overwhelmingly chose her. But it is a question of experience over the last few years, which will be a key factor.
What's your hunch?
I don't have one. I don't know where the balance of membership lies, and that is key. Because you may find that there's one or two strong branches which have got lots of members on one side of the constituency or the other, and I'm afraid I don't know where that membership lies.
And how easy would it be if Suella did lose tonight to go to be moved to another constituency? How does that happen? How easy would it be?
Well, the first thing that would happen if she did lose was, as I say, that a large part of her existing constituency, it goes into a new constituency called Hamble Valley. So it would be perfectly reasonable for her to stand for Hamble Valley. She's likely, and this is the difficulty in that part of the country, she is likely there. If she doesn't win this evening, stands for Hamble Valley, she will be up against another Conservative MP, Paul Holmes. So it is very complex in that part of South East Hampshire.
Let's broaden it, Robert, because a poll came out yesterday, YouGov, showing Rishi Sunak has pulled level with Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, and who would make the best Prime Minister. But the Tories stayed miles behind Labour, who I think still had a lead of about 20 points. So good on the one hand, but not on the other.
Yes, and one of the striking things that's coming back from people who are canvassing for the local elections across the whole of large parts of England is that they're saying that now Rishi is a positive on the doorsteps. He's been there long enough. There's a sense of competence and order about his prime ministership that there is that sense that he is something that people can sell from the Conservative side. And normally, voting intention runs with best Prime Minister. At the moment, Rishi is well ahead of the Tory party and Keir Starmer is well behind the Labour Party. And over the next few months, we're going to see whether Keir Starmer goes up to the Labour Party or Rishi Sunak draws the Conservatives up to his level.
Interesting.
You've got to tell us where Waterlooville came from, Robert.
Yeah, go on.
Leave
us hanging.
You teased us.
It's actually where the forces that were actually being brought together for the Battle of Waterloo were based. That was where they were brought together in the 19th century in preparation for the expedition which ultimately resulted in the Battle of Waterloo.
You know everything.
Educational as well on GB News this morning.
Great to talk to you, Robert. That's Robert Hayward, Lord Hayward, on that battle. And, of course, we'll keep you up to date on that. Great to talk to you, because we'll know later tonight whether the Home Secretary is going to win that fight.
I wonder who Rishi wants to win.
Suella.
Yeah, probably. Right, still to come. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office has fined TikTok nearly £13 million, and we will tell you why very soon.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen. Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's 10:24 on The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and the fabulous Dawn Neeson.
The UK's Information Commissioner's Office has fined TikTok almost £13 million for failing to protect the privacy of children.
Up to 1.4 million children under the age of 13 have been allowed to use the platform. That rules us out then, since 2020.
One of us is on TikTok, right? I bet you can't guess which one. Anyway, an investigation by the OCI says TikTok used data belonging to children under 13 without parental consent.
So joining us to discuss this is Andy Burrows, who's an advisor to the Molly Rose Foundation. Andy, just remind us first of all what the Molly Rose Foundation is.
Morning, both. Yeah, so the Molly Rose Foundation was set up following the tragic death of Molly Russell, who, as your viewers will know, died by suicide after being bombarded on social media platforms, particularly Instagram and Pinterest, with harmful content, with content that was recommending suicide and self-harm. And last year, for the very first time, the inquest into Molly's death determined that social media played a not insignificant part in contributing to Molly's death.
I don't understand, Annie, because you have to take me through this, because TikTok is an alien world to both Dawn and I. How can TikTok use this data without parental consent? And more to the point, how can the regulators stop them?
So, TikTok is the company that's been fined here, but actually this is an industry-wide problem. Look, it's an open secret that the majority of children under 13 have social media accounts, but TikTok in this case, other social media platforms equally at fault, have not done enough to identify whether users on their accounts, on their platforms rather, are children. That means that children under the age of 13 have been able to open accounts. They are legally supposed to have parental consent to do so. But it also then means that children have been using these accounts and the platform hasn't been able to determine whether or not the user is a child or an adult. And the reason that that is really problematic, it's not just that their privacy has been compromised, but it's then if you don't know that a user is a child, you can't offer them the safer, more age-appropriate experience that legally companies are now supposed to offer them. And that means that we will have seen children being bombarded as a result of the algorithms that the platform use with harmful content. Because, very much the problem, and we know this through Molly's story, is not only that there's really horrible, egregious content on these platforms. Some of it is graphic, it is disturbing, it's almost a kind of twisted take on influencer culture, but focusing on trying to incite suicide and self-harm. Not only is that content there, but the algorithms then actively push that content out to users. So it means that very, very suddenly you can be bombarded, overwhelmed with this incredibly harmful content.
Andy, surely the genie is out of the bottle with this now. You know, so many youngsters are on this, and some older people as well. So you can't take it back now, and it's out there. You can't. How are you going to stop children going on this app? It's just not going to happen, is it? Realistically.
Well, we know that platforms can do much more to identify the age of their users. There are some medium-sized platforms. There's a French social network called YouView, which has actually checked the age of every single one of its users on the platform. It is now actually a legal requirement. And yesterday really was, I think, a shot across the bows from the data protection regulator, targeting TikTok, but probably actually sending a message across the entire industry that they need to invest in the technology to be able to do this effectively. Now, the fine that was levied yesterday, is not a lot in the grand scheme of things when we're talking about some of the largest companies in the world. So what we'd really like to see now is actually the regulator go one step further and start targeting all of those other companies that actually, in some cases, have done a lot less than TikTok. Think of the likes of Snapchat, for example, which took down 8,000 accounts. Think about how many under 13s will have Snapchat accounts, probably the majority. They took down 8,000 in the last 3 months, which compares to, say, TikTok's 15 million. I mean, that's literally sitting on their hands, profiting from children using their services, but not even taking any steps, any cursory steps to try and identify them and then help to keep them safe.
Andy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. That's Andy Burrows, advisor to the Molly Rose Foundation. But I just think you're not going to stop.
The turnover of TikTok in Europe is over £1 billion a year.
Yeah.
13 million pounds.
Yeah,
Peanuts.
exactly. It's not enough. Right. A 21-year-old man has avoided jail after raping a 13-year-old girl when he was 17. Instead of a prison sentence, the judge handed Sheen Hogg 270 hours community service, in line with new guidelines in Scotland recommending that under-25s aren't sent to prison.
There's predictably and rightly been outrage online. J.K. Rowling, one of my great heroes, she has said, wading in on Twitter, but we're going to get a legal perspective on this from Thomas Leonard Ross, KC, in Scotland. Good morning, Thomas. People won't understand why it's... if you're 17 and you rape someone, you don't have to go to prison, but if you're 21, you do. I don't get it. Can you explain why the law is different in Scotland?
The law isn't different. The reference is to a sentencing guideline, which requires the judge to take account of the age of an offender who's under the age of 25. It certainly doesn't say that somebody under 25 cannot be sent to prison. That's not a requirement. And actually, 99.9% of people under 25 who commit the offence of rape are sent to prison. So this is not a typical disposal. In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Are there special circumstances, perhaps, in why the judge reached this conclusion, which has outraged people like J.K. Rowling, who we know has been campaigning on women's rights for a long time in Scotland?
Well, we don't have sometimes the judges put a full statement of reasons on the judicial website. We don't have that here. But the judge did focus on the question of rehabilitation. The guideline under consideration requires that in the case of somebody under 25, rehabilitation is what they call a primary consideration. And the judge has said that having considered the question of rehabilitation, he didn't think that prison would contribute to rehabilitation. So that's the judge's justification for the sentence that he chose.
And J.K. Rowling's tweet there, I thought, was incredibly painful. It's like basically the message seems to be, if you're under the age of 25, first time free, you can get away with it. What does Scotland have against women at the moment?
I mean, I'm not on to justify the sentence. I'm simply explaining the background to it. But it is important to realise that, I've been involved in over 1,000 High Court cases. I only know of 3 other cases where the individual avoided a sentence for rape. The judge himself in this case said that had he been a fully mature adult, then the sentence would have been 4 or 5 years imprisonment, and that's very much the typical sentence that is imposed. So I understand the public dismay. There are other sentencing objectives, including punishment, including deterring other people from doing the same thing. communicating society's disapproval of offending. And people think that none of those factors have found their way into this sentence. So I understand that there are issues concerning protection of women, and that this is another example where women are entitled to feel perhaps that they've been let down.
Indeed, they do. Thanks. That's Thomas Leonard Ross, KC in Scotland. Now, still to come, we're going to bring you the latest from Scotland, where this extraordinary story. Nicola Sturgeon, remember her? She was the First Minister of Scotland until last week. Her husband, Peter Murrell, has been he's been questioned by the police in connection with an investigation into SNP finances. That's after your morning news with
Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into the funding and finances of the SNP. Police Scotland confirmed a 58-year-old man is in custody and searches are being carried out at a number of properties. The SNP says it's fully cooperating with the investigation. Donald Trump says the only crime he's committed is fearlessly defending his nation against those who seek to destroy it. The former US president has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments during his 2016 election campaign. He claims he's a victim of election interference. A tick-borne virus which can cause meningitis has been detected by health officials. The UK Health Security Agency has found 3 possible cases of the virus in England since 2019, with the first confirmed case in Yorkshire last year. The infection can be asymptomatic and cause mild to severe illnesses, such as encephalitis, where the brain swells to deadly levels. And invitations to the King's coronation feature the title of Queen Camilla for the first time. Camilla will be formally crowned alongside the new king, marking the transition from her previous title of Queen Consort, which she's used since the Queen died. The invite to Abbey Church of Westminster on the 6th of May will be sent to more than 2,000 guests. US President Joe Biden has confirmed he won't be attending, represented instead by First Lady Jill Biden. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2489 and €1.1396. The price of gold is £1,619.78 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,659 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. It's 10:40 and this is To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Dawn Neeson. News just in, the husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested in connection with investigation into Scottish national finances.
He's Peter Murrell, he's 58, he's been married to Nicola Sturgeon, I think since 2010. He's being questioned by detectives this morning, and it's all to do with S&P finances, and their searches have been carried out a number of properties.
Wow, Mr Murrell it's a huge story. Yeah. Mr Murrell stepped down as chief executive during the recent leadership campaign.
The S&P has released a statement saying, and it's very carefully worded, I'll read it to you, clearly it would not be appropriate to comment on any live police investigation, but the S&P has been cooperating fully with this investigation and will continue to do so. On Saturday, the governing body of the NEC, the National Executive Committee, agreed to a review of governance and transparency that will be taken forward in the coming weeks.
Wow, this is a huge story.
Seismic. She's only just stood down. I said at the time, I think this iceberg in the background of the police investigation.
It was carefully sort of ignored, wasn't it? It was like, 1 minute she was saying, I've got, a full tank, I'm raring to go, and then 2 weeks later it's like I've run out of gas, so I'm stepping down to.
And I always thought whoever won the S&P leadership contest with 3 candidates would require him to stand down, but as it happened, he went before the winner was even declared.
Yes, it's very intriguing, isn't it? It'd be very interesting to see what's going on.
Ongoing investigations, so obviously we can make no comment.
Nope,
jump to
absolutely.
Any conclusions.
It'd be very interesting to see what Nicola's got to say on it, though.
Yes, not much, I suspect. We haven't seen her this morning, I don't think.
No,
she... Talk about the generality of the S&P. The wheels are clearly coming off.
Yeah, well, that noise from the left was Stephen Pound, former Labour MP, not waiting to be introduced, but that we do.
We've just done that now.
And who do we have to our right?
The lovely Emma
every
Webb.
sense of the word. Emma Webb from...
Yes. The Common Sense Society.
Common Sense Society. Could you give Stephen a lesson in common sense? Politically, you sat opposite the SNP. Nicola Sturgeon, whenever we think of her, a formidable political operator. Were you sceptical when she said, were you surprised that she was standing down when she did?
I was astounded. Basically, she took the Jacinda Ardern line, I've just run out of gas.
That was a New Zealand Prime Minister.
Yeah, indeed. So, and who had been incredibly successful. She took the New Zealand Labour Party to a massive, great victory. I was very, very surprised, but she was, and you're absolutely right, Andrew, she was formidable. I mean, she destroyed Labour.
She did.
Yeah, one time we had over 50 seats. We're down to 1 now. And a lot, I think we'll bounce back, no question about that. But a lot of that is to do to her communication skills, which were extraordinary. She never sat in the House. She didn't need to. She was above the House of Commons. But I have to say, we used to say, if only she was on our side.
Yeah. Might not be thinking that now.
No, good Lord, no, we've moved on.
Well, absolutely, yeah, and we must move on briefly here as well. Joining us for more on this is GB News Scotland reporter Tony Maguire. Good morning, Tony. What more do we know about what's happening?
Good morning, Wes. Well,
details are pretty thin on the ground just now. We know that a 58-year-old man was arrested in connection with a finance issue that has been ongoing investigation by Police Scotland. Police Scotland have said that the man is in custody and is being questioned by police, and officers are also carrying out searches at a number of addresses, including, I believe, SNP HQ in Edinburgh. We know realistically very little. We know that obviously the finance investigation has been ongoing with Police Scotland for quite a couple of months now, and certainly we did get a very short response, I would say, from the Scottish National Party, who's obviously echoed the sentiment that it clearly would not be appropriate to comment any further just now on a live police investigation. But at its meeting on Saturday, the governing body of the SNP, the National Executive Committee, agreed to review the governance and transparency now that things are expected to be taken forward in the coming weeks. So, you know, key details quite thin on the ground at the minute, but certainly here it's quite an active street in Glasgow.
Of course, is that there's the police are looking around a donation of around £500,000, which was for party campaigning. The suggestion it might have been used for the independence cause, and also we know that Mr. Murrell made a donation to the SNP. That's not disputed, over £100,000, a loan rather to the SNP, which he didn't declare in the normal way in breach of electoral rules.
Yes, that's correct. He came under quite intense scrutiny for that. Again, for quite some time, Scottish Conservatives have been on the SNP's case quite consistently over the matters of party finance. And yes, the £500,000, you know, summary of donations that was to go towards the pro-independence campaign, obviously as the SNP in the last year came up against rebuttal after rebuttal from Westminster and then the courts, that wasn't going to happen. We know that just at the height of the SNP leadership race, which of course saw Humza Yousaf replace Nicola Sturgeon, we know that at that stage that police were looking into the purchase of vehicles at that time. So quite a lot of you know, information to kind of get our heads around this morning, but certainly more expected to be spoken about this issue on the day, over the course of today, should I say.
Tony Maguire. So a story that we'll be covering in full throughout the day on GB News and, yeah, seeing what's happening. But now we move on to the exciting part of the show. It's all exciting, obviously. The paper review. And we are joined, you've already heard them. We have the lovely Stephen Pound, former Labour MP. Hello again.
Good morning.
And the equally lovely Emma Webb, who's director
rather more
of
lovely.
Common Sense.
That is true.
I'm not being sexist here, not at all. So who wants to start? So we start with you, Steve. Let's go to the story that's on the front page of every single newspaper today. Donald Trump in
Probably
America.
every newspaper in the world, I would think,
Yeah, well,
actually.
today is a target-rich environment. I mean, there are stories that you couldn't even dream about. And I just know that any minute now, Donald Trump is going to start comparing himself to someone else who got crucified over Easter. I mean, you could just... You could, he will, won't he? Because he is utterly and totally shameless. But on the other hand, I think there was a certain sign of a sort of... If you actually had a look at him, I've had a feeling of Schadenfreude when I saw him looking rather like a slightly deflated great orange balloon when he went into this great skyscraper, which is the Manhattan Central Criminal Court. He actually looked slightly deflated. He didn't say anything when he came. I was expecting him to say, "It's a stitch up. You know, they're trying to do me." You know, all the usual rubbish. But I'm not privy to his speech at Mar-a-Lago this morning.
He said all that at Mar-a-Lago.
He did, yeah, and he went through...
With an audience which was designed to clap and cheer as opposed to jeer and hiss.
Yes, 25 minutes is quite a short speech for him as well.
Isn't the extraordinary thing that he is actually energising his absolute base, you know, the complete, the total Trumpians. But I think, I genuinely have been trying to be non-partisan about this, about the ghastly orange hooligan. But, I mean, I think that what we are seeing is that most of America, the sane, decent Americans are actually thinking, you know, up with this, we will not put any more. This is just getting embarrassing.
Emma, though, the opposite does seem to be happening.
Yes, exactly.
Popularity seems to be increasing.
This is great for Donald Trump's election campaign. You know, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I would love for the President of the United States and the Republican candidate to be Ron DeSantis. I think that would be fantastic for America. I think that would be fantastic for the world. But the reality is that this is going to play into the narrative of Trump being persecuted.
Yeah.
It's already showing that amongst his supporters, this is really increasing his popularity. And frankly, I mean, even I, you know, as I say, I'm not a huge fan of Donald Trump or anything like that, but even I think that this looks, you know, I smell a rat here. I think given what other past presidents of the United States have done, and the fact that this is being, you know, it's being sort of described as being actually quite a tenuous case, which will possibly end up being thrown out, in which case it really would be very good for Donald Trump because he would be both a martyr and vindicated.
Yeah.
I just think that this is, you know, if this is being done strategically, then it's obviously not being done
And Emma, on a federal
with
level,
any wisdom.
it had been ruled out, a prosecution. The previous Attorney General ruled it out. This is a very ambitious Attorney General.
Yeah, definitely, certainly is.
Bragg, you couldn't make
And
it
his
up.
daughter, his daughter worked for Kamala Harris,
who is the Vice President.
Exactly. So this really is, you know, this couldn't possibly be better for Donald Trump. Unless, of course, he goes to jail.
But
even that might be good for his campaign.
How bad for America does it look?
Well, I think, I mean, in whichever way you look at it, if you look at it from the perspective of somebody who thinks that Donald Trump is guilty and, you know, an orange hooligan and so on, then that looks very bad for the United States. But if you're looking at it from the other perspective and you see a former president and you believe that the former president is being persecuted by the current government, then, of course, that looks bad from the other perspective as well. So there's no angle through which you could look at this in a positive light.
There's a good pub quiz question here. Which other president of the United States, only one, was arrested and when and what for?
Well, it wasn't Nixon. He wasn't arrested.
No. You're not going to get it, Steve.
It's Ulysses Grant.
It is.
Yeah.
Well done. 1782, and for why?
Indeed.
But why?
Having a silly first name.
No, I tell you why. He was arrested for speeding in his horse carriage. He was racing a friend in a horse carriage. Isn't that
I think we should have a pub quiz team.
Isn't that brilliant that he got it? But he wasn't charged. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. That's extraordinary. But I have to say this business with Trump. There's something profoundly tacky about this whole Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal business. I mean, this may sound odd coming from me, but I just think it's like something on the bottom of your shoe you want to scrape off.
Well, it's also not
Tacky,
befitting
it's
or
sordid.
becoming of America.
Yeah.
You know, America's stature globally.
There's also apparently allegedly an unborn a child out of wedlock as well.
He paid the doorman at the Trump Tower.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, and it was the National Enquirer that actually paid to keep them quiet.
That well-known organ of
to keep them
respectability
quiet,
and facts.
absolutely. Yeah,
it's interesting. I was actually just trying to find out who on earth Stormy Daniels was, and purely in the interests of...
I thought you'd already have known, Stephen.
I don't know who Stormy Daniels is.
Well, I'm sorry, and Clifford, her name, but her most popular one was actually called Desert Stormy.
And I don't want the details.
It involves
Children
a great many US Marines.
School holidays. Children are watching.
Right. It's not even lunchtime,
No.
Stephen.
Yes, I know.
Yes. You can always rely on Stephen Pound being a former Labourer
Lower
to
the tone.
lower the tone.
Yes, well, that was my job.
I learnt from the master.
Thank you, my dear.
Yeah, shall we move on now? Shall we go to another? Yeah, let's
go to Emma, voice of reason.
Let's go to Emma, a voice of reason, and way too young to remember anything about 1872, unlike some people on the panel.
1782, which is why Stephen was so familiar with it.
Right, OK, Emma, you've chosen a story in the
Jacob
Times,
Rees-Mogg told me.
Which is... Boys, transgender women could be barred from same-sex places. We've discussed this story briefly today, but what's your take on this?
Good news. We're not used to good news, are we? Particularly not with respect to the trans debate. So this is Rishi Sunak having pledged to change the Equality Act to create more legal clarity that sex refers to biological sex.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen in schools and elsewhere, and particularly external pressure groups coming into institutions and almost misrepresenting the Equality Act so that same-sex spaces are not being protected. There was recently some news that showed that, many schools don't have same-sex toilets, changing facilities, that kind of thing. So this is fantastic news for women's rights. Kemi Badenoch and Baroness Faulkner have come out, very much in support of this. My only hold-up on this is that, I, as a woman, don't like being referred to as a biological woman because because it implies a sort of, it sounds a bit like detergent,
Yeah.
woman non-bio. It implies that there is such a thing as, you know, in a way it almost creates this ambiguity because you're suggesting that there are two types of sex. There are biological sex and non-biological sex.
And
I think it might actually ultimately set a precedent that will.
I get that, and I'm with you 100%. But what of the man who has changed his gender and has completely transitioned, no longer has a penis? He will not feel he wants to be in a male changing room. He wants to be in a changing room with what he will regard as fellow women. Why can't that person go into a woman's changing room? Because that will be stopped if we go down this route that Rishi's going down, I think.
Well, I mean, the toilet situation is a difficult one for obvious reasons. I don't think that non-biological males should be allowed into female spaces full stop. I just don't believe that that should be allowed. But I think that, you know, one of the benefits to this is that aside from the debate around the Gender Recognition Act, people simply being able to identify as whatever they like and enter into same-sex spaces, whether it's male or female, that this does actually provide some legal clarity over the confusion between sex and gender. Now, I don't believe in all this sort of gender as a construct stuff, but I think that this really is going to go a long way to protecting women's spaces in what has become a febrile debate. I think that this is a real win, and I don't think that non-biological females should be allowed in biological female spaces.
I think there's a slight problem there, and I think you put your finger on it. I remember April Ashley, Jan Morris.
Yeah,
I mean, April. They were both
early people who transitioned.
They were some of the.
They were in those days when we called them transsexuals. In those days,
indeed, but they were both born men, clearly in the wrong bodies. I mean, anyone who saw April Ashley, I mean, she's originally a merchant seaman from Liverpool called George, and she ended up as a model. She's utterly beautiful, totally feminine. And as far as I'm concerned, April Ashley and Jan Morris, were they still with us, should be able to go into women's toilets. Simple as that. But that is a tiny percentage. And the real problem we have here, and getting back almost to the Nicola Sturgeon business and rapists in women's prisons, is that the bad have actually really ruined it for almost everybody there. When it was a tiny percentage and people were respected for that, then let's go along with that. I agree with you about biological female. I mean, April Ashley was a woman. Jan Morris was a woman. The fact that they were born men is neither here nor there.
Well, the point is that ambiguous laws are open to people taking the mick, and this is a way of trying to get around the fact that there are bad people who will try to take the mick out of this, aside from people like Blair White, who look very feminine, you know, and so on.
The thing is, it shouldn't be a game of trumps about whose rights are more important.
And I just want to say, Jan Morris, of course, was the Times journalist as a man who broke the story that
Mount Everest.
that Hillary had conquered Everest.
Yes, that's right. She was halfway up Everest, covering it for the Times.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's a fascinating debate, and we could carry on, and we probably will do. But still to come, we're bringing the latest development in Scotland, where Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, is understood to have been arrested. This is To The Point on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. A grey and damp day for many of us today. Outbreaks of rain crossing the country from west to east. It's going to feel colder because of the cloud and the rain compared with the last couple of days. Weather fronts moving in from the west. Now, these weather fronts will clear through during the next 24 hours, followed by a showery day tomorrow, and then fine weather returns for the Easter weekend. But for many of us, it is a damp afternoon. Outbreaks of rain continuing. Much of this rain is light and patchy across central and western England, Wales into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Brighter skies follow for western Scotland and Northern Ireland. And it stays largely bright for East Anglia and the southeast following a frosty start. Temperatures recovering 14 Celsius in Norwich. But those outbreaks of rain are moving east, albeit relatively slowly, and they'll reach East Anglia in the southeast during the evening, clearing from Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. These areas seeing some showers pushing back in, but otherwise increasingly dry towards the west, whilst the rain clings on in the east. A lot of cloud, and as a result, virtually everywhere will be frost-free. But it will be a grey start to Thursday for the vast majority. Outbreaks of rain slow to clear East Anglia first thing, and sticking around for parts of eastern Aberdeenshire as well as Shetland through much of the day, along with a keen breeze. So that's going to make it feel cold. A lot of cloud elsewhere, but some brighter spells emerging, albeit with some heavy showers developing, especially through parts of Wales, central and southeast England. It's here where the highest temperatures will be, however, 14 to 16 Celsius, so a touch warmer compared with the last few days, and certainly a marked difference compared with today. Then into Thursday evening, the showers tend to ease. They become confined more to eastern parts of England. The rain across Shetland also tends to disappear. And then into Friday, Saturday and Sunday, most places drier, brighter and warmer.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Breaking news in the last hour. The husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. Peter Murrell has been questioned by detectives this morning, and we'll bring you all the latest on the GB News.
And that man, Donald Trump, of course he was defiant when he addressed his supporters in Florida. He's made history, the first ex-president to face a criminal trial. He's denying all 34 charges. He says it's all politically motivated. Do you agree? It's a witch hunt.
And the title of Queen Camilla officially used for the first time as Buckingham Palace sent out those invitations. I've got mine, you haven't, have you? It also reveals that Prince George will serve as one of the 8 pages of honours, walking behind his grandfather and helping to carry his robes.
And the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, she's got a big fight in her hands, hasn't she, with Stop the Boat. She's also fighting for her political future because her constituency is disappearing, so is one of the MP next to her, and they're fighting out in the new constituency of Waterlooville tonight, the new Battle of Waterloo.
See what you did there. So let us know your thoughts on all of our talking points today by getting in touch with us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And the headlines with...
It's Tatiana Sanchez.
We've done them.
Thank you very much and good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into finances of the SNP. Searches are being carried out at a number of properties, including his home, where police have set up a cordon outside. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independence campaign fund. The SNP says it's fully cooperating with the investigation. Donald Trump says the only crime he's committed is fearlessly defending his nation against those who seek to destroy it. The former president has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments during his 2016 election campaign. He claims he's a victim of election interference.
This fake case was brought only to interfere with the upcoming 2024 election, and it should be dropped immediately. Our elections were like those of a third world country, and now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country.
Associate Professor of American History Kevin Yule says this will only aid Trump's chances of re-election in 2024.
And this is what he thrives on. This is what he has always thrived on. So when he's in battle, that means his supporters are rallied. That means he becomes more popular at the polls. It's difficult not to see this as a plot to get Trump re-elected in some ways. Perhaps not as president, but certainly I think he's in a good position now to stand for the Republican Party in 2024.
A school leaders' union has overwhelmingly rejected a pay offer from the government. 9 in 10 members of the National Association of Head Teachers voted against the deal and will now discuss further possible strike action. It says teachers in England voted to strike this month and next month after rejecting a 4.3% pay rise. Members from the National Education Union will walk out on the 27th of April and the 2nd of May. Environment Agency workers are warning communities, waters and wildlife will be put at risk this month when they strike over pay. Unison says thousands of its members in England, including those that work on coastal sea defences and tackle water pollution, will walk out from the 14th to the 17th of April. It's accusing the government of refusing to allow the agency to improve a pay rise of 2%. A tick-borne virus which can cause meningitis has been detected by health officials in the UK. The UK Health Security Agency has found 3 possible cases of the virus in England since 2019, with the first confirmed case in Yorkshire last year. The infection can be asymptomatic and cause illnesses ranging from mild to severe, such as encephalitis, where the brain swells to deadly levels. Labour has vowed to fix the issue of fly tipping, as research shows there's almost 3,000 incidents of dumped waste per day in England. The party has pledged to clean Britain up, as government data shows cases of dumped rubbish has increased by 1/3 over the last 13 years under the Conservatives. Shadow Secretary of State for Justice Steve Reed says communities deserve to feel proud of where they live.
Now 3,000 reports every single day, for goodness sake, in this country of rubbish dumped on our streets, nothing happening about it. So Labour is proposing to set up clean-up squads so that those who make the mess will clear up the mess. And people will understand that is just fairness, but it's also a deterrent for other people who are tempted to get out on the streets and junk their rubbish rather than taking it to the dump themselves or organising for it to be picked up. It's simply not fair on families living in communities that they deserve to feel proud of.
And invitations to the King's coronation will feature the title Queen Camilla for the first time. The Queen Consort will be formally crowned alongside the new King and transition to her new title. The invite to Abbey Church of Westminster on the 6th of May will be sent to more than 2,000 guests. US President Joe Biden has confirmed he won't be attending, represented instead by First Lady Jill Biden. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Andrew and Dawn.
Welcome back. Some breaking news over the last hour. The husband of former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances.
He's being questioned by detectives. It's all to do with £600,000 of SNP money, how it was spent, and also, of course, Mr Murrell made a personal loan to the SNP of over £100,000, which he didn't declare. Remember, he stepped down as chief executive just a couple of weeks ago, and Nicola Sturgeon, of course, stood down only last week.
It's moving very fast, isn't it? Scottish Labour Deputy Leader Jackie Baillie has said this is a deeply concerning development and the Police Scotland investigation must be allowed to proceed without interference. We need Humza Yousaf and Nicola Sturgeon to urgently state what they knew and when. And, well, joining us for more is GB News Scotland reporter Toby Maguire. Good morning, Tony. What do we know? What's happening exactly now?
So I'm out here outside the home of Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon. There's quite a hefty police presence here. We've seen about 4 vans in total, lots of equipment getting taken into the house. We know this is just one of several properties that has been hit by police this morning. And then, of course, Peter Murrell, formally arrested this morning, although details obviously quite sketchy on an open investigation. We do know, however, that Police Scotland have been actively pursuing a case over these funds, £600,000 in total, that were supposed to be ring-fenced for an independence campaign. That independence campaign obviously repeatedly shot down by Westminster and by the Supreme Court. We know that the money that has been thought to be used for independence, that the police, that is what they're investigating. And as you said, of course, that £100,000 donation that did not fall within the guidelines that for money like that should be notified of. We also know, you mentioned Jackie Baillie there, we also know that Edinburgh South MP Joanne Cherry, obviously Ash Regan in the recent SNP leadership race, her only endorsement, and Joanna Cherry has stepped down from the SNP National Executive Committee as well over issues of transparency, with urges that obviously things get back on track. SNP did put out an albeit short statement today saying that clearly it would not be appropriate to comment on any live police investigation, but the SNP have been cooperating fully this morning on this investigation and will continue to do so. And then at its meeting on Saturday, the governing body of the SNP, that National Executive Committee, they agreed to review the governance and the transparency that has become such a hot issue in the leadership debate that has raged over the past few weeks.
Tony, before we lose you, can I just ask one question? Do we know if Nicola was with her husband when he was arrested this morning?
Good question.
Yeah, unfortunately I don't have the exact answer for that, but perhaps we'll certainly have more information coming out on this story fast and furiously, so perhaps the next time we speak I can have an answer for you then.
Thank you.
Tony Maguire, our reporter in Scotland, I blame money on it. She was nowhere to be seen.
I was wondering that, yes, absolutely.
Now, let's talk about another police investigation, not involving Nicola Sturgeon's husband, but the former President of the United States. So after he rejected 34 charges in that courthouse in New York, he delivered a very defiant speech at Mar-a-Lago, his Palm Beach home. He said he's a victim of a witch hunt and the case is fake. What do you think?
Well, I mean, joining us this morning for more is the legal fellow at Heritage Foundation and former federal prosecutor, Zach Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for joining us this morning. So what do you make of what's happened? Obviously, it's a very fast-moving story again, and Mr. Trump's reaction.
Well, thank you for having me on this morning. Look, this is unprecedented. Never before in the history of the United States has a former president been indicted. And once we saw the indictment unsealed yesterday, the charges formally announced and made public, I think many people felt that this was a very thin case. Essentially, you have Alvin Bragg, who is a local district attorney, a local prosecutor there in New York City, bringing false document charges that at least in part look like they're going to depend on federal campaign finance violations. Now, what's odd about that is that in the United States, typically federal campaign finance violations are prosecuted by federal authorities. They're either prosecuted by the U.S.'s Federal Election Commission or the U.S. Department of Justice, and both of those entities decided not to pursue these charges. And so after they decided not to pursue these charges, now that you have this local district attorney, who, by the way, is of an opposite political party, he's a Democrat, than Donald Trump bringing these charges, I think many people find this entire affair very, very disturbing.
Zach, do you think it's possible that this ambitious attorney in New York, who, as you point out, is part of the Democratic Party, do you think if Joe Biden and the Democratic leadership had not wanted this to happen, they could have effectively put a stop to it?
I doubt it. In the United States, we have a two-tiered system of government. We have the national government, the federal government, and then each state has its own local government as well. And so that leads to a two-tier prosecutorial system here in the United States. You have federal prosecutors who can pursue federal charges, and then you have state and local prosecutors who can pursue state charges. And because Alvin Bragg is a local elected district attorney, a local elected prosecutor, Joe Biden, the federal government, wouldn't have really any authority to stop these charges from going forward. But I will say this, what's very interesting about this case is that by bringing these charges against Donald Trump, Alvin Bragg, who's a local official, has essentially catapulted himself into the national spotlight. I suspect he thinks this is very good for his political career. His political star is now on the rise, particularly with people on the left in United States politics. And then also, don't forget as well, Alvin Bragg, he came into office pledging not to prosecute many, many crimes, including most misdemeanors, many low-level felonies. And so now that he's bringing these charges against Donald Trump, I think many people are looking at his overall justice agenda and saying that these charges don't really fit within his broader policy priorities.
Zach, can I just ask, what happens to Trump now? What happens next in the process? I mean, I think the next trial is arranged for December, but I mean, legal experts are saying this could drag on into 2024, which is, as we know, when the next American elections are going to happen. So could you just explain exactly what happens now to Trump? I mean, he's free just to go about his business, I'm assuming.
Yeah, for now, he essentially is. Essentially, what we saw yesterday was an arraignment. It's kind of where the charges are formally announced against Donald Trump. Things like pretrial release are worked out with the court and Trump's attorneys. And so I suspect what we're going to see now is a flurry of pretrial motions by his lawyers. We'll likely see motions by his lawyers to get the charges dismissed. I suspect you'll see motions to get the case transferred somewhere else within the state of New York. Right now, the case is going to move forward in Lower Manhattan in New York City. Donald Trump and his lawyers, I suspect, will argue that it's impossible for him to get a fair trial in Manhattan. And so they'll ask the judge to transfer it somewhere else within the state. But I suspect the trial date will likely be moved. I suspect we're going to see a lot of pretrial motions by both the prosecutors and by Trump's defense attorneys. And I think in many ways, we are just getting started with these charges against Donald Trump because, don't forget, he's also facing a federal investigation by a special counsel with the U.S. Department of Justice. And then there's also an investigation being run out of the state of Georgia by a different local elected district attorney there as well.
Can I ask you just finally, Zach, until a few weeks ago, Ron DeSantis seemed to be a shoo-in for the Republican Party nomination to be the next president. He's almost been buried by Donald Trump, and he's now, 24 points behind. Can he come back, or are we now looking at a procession for Donald Trump to be the next Republican Party candidate?
Well, I think my crystal ball is broken, so I've given up trying to predict politics. I try to stick to the policy these days. But look, I think this is certainly going to dominate the headlines as we head into the 2024 election season. These charges against Donald Trump, it's something that nearly every other major political candidate, including Ron DeSantis, has already weighed in on. And so I suspect we'll hear about this a lot as the presidential campaign kicks into high gear.
All right, that's Zach Smith from the Washington-based Heritage Foundation.
It's absolutely fascinating, isn't
Really
it? I must
is.
admit. And I love the fact that if he, does become president, he could pardon himself even if he's in prison.
Incredible.
Go figure. Right, still to come, Home Secretary Suella Braverman could face a legal challenge over her plan to house migrants on a barge at Portland Port. We'll be speaking to one local MP who against her plans. You're with GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 11:20. You're with Andrew Pierce, that's him, and Dawn Neeson, that's me, on GB News, and this is To The Point. Now, residents in the town of Bexhill-on-Sea have reacted with concern and anger over the Home Office announcement that a former prison there will be used to accommodate over 1,000 people seeking asylum.
Our South East of England reporter Ray Addison has been to the area and has this report.
So if you look over that way to the fields, there's a house you can see there, and we're just behind there. So it's about 3 fields away. Obviously there's a lot more houses a lot closer up there. They're literally on the entrance to it. But you can see the state of disrepair. I just don't know how we're going to get these people in there in good conditions to live in a humane way.
The residents of Bexhill are worried.
Last week, the government announced plans to turn the town's former prison, HMP Northeye, into accommodation for 1,200 asylum seekers. Alison Bonner is a local resident. She feels the numbers planned are too high and too soon.
There's so many people going to be coming in. You know, it's a 24% increase alone with these 1,200 males in our water population. And we've seen how Manson, you know, that was supposed to be 1,600 people in there, ended up with 4,000 people. We can't take that, and there's no guarantees that it's going to stay at 1,200. You're better off trying to do a phase entry, so maybe do 300 for the first sort of 8 months, see how that goes, see what the impact is on other people. I just think it's too much too soon, and we haven't got time. It's 4 months away.
With channel crossings at an all-time high, places like Bexhill are being targeted by the Home Office to ease the pressure on the UK asylum system. However, these residents say it will make the area unsafe.
The children just won't be able to go out. We won't let them out. They won't be able to ride their bikes around here.
I wouldn't be so concerned if it was families, but it's sort of 1,200 young men.
It's an additional risk to an already strained system.
Caroline Swebby runs a cafe close to the Northeye site. She says housing asylum seekers within walking distance could force her to close.
I'm really worried, really upset, really concerned. It's going to destroy this area completely. I feel it would be dangerous for me because I live in the middle of nowhere. I walk my dogs around here. It's dark, there's no street lighting. It's just dangerous.
A town council meeting had been planned for this evening to discuss residents' concerns. However, that's now been cancelled over fears that protesters wanted to confront officials. Nevertheless, residents say they'll still be outside Bexhill Town Hall tonight to air their frustration. Ray Addison, GB News.
That's a story, because there's a lot of... every time the government try and propose somewhere to put these asylums, it's to get them out of hotels. They're in 400 hotels.
Which we need to do, surely.
Costing at least £150 a night. People say, fine, but not here. It's the classic NIMBYism.
What is the answer? This is the thing. People come up with solutions, right? And lots of people come up with solutions.
Yeah.
And then everyone goes, no, you can't do that.
And you'd have thought one secure place to put asylum seekers is a former prison.
But they're not prisoners, Andrew. They're here and we need to look after them, and you can't put them in prison.
Why not?
Either.
I would.
The problem with the hotel solution, is it's very, very expensive. It's also ruining local communities.
Yeah, it is.
If you're, like, in a seaside town and you've got a load of migrants in the hotel, it's stopping, the
tourists can't come in.
Tourists.
And the barge, which is the proposal to go in Portland, we're hoping to talk about that later in the programme, the Dutch used to put asylum seekers in the barge. So lots of other countries do it, but why can't we do it? Because the Labour Party says, oh, you're treating them... What about their human rights?
Human rights.
They shouldn't be here anyway, a lot of them.
You know what? We, as in the United Kingdom, always get more stick than any other country in Europe for this. I mean, Poland, is it? The Polish get away with building a wall, literally their version of Hadrian's Wall, to stop migrants getting in.
Yeah.
And then that's fine. Everyone goes, no, that's fine, you can do that.
And people say France take far more refugees than us. That's because France is 2.5 times the size of Britain.
It's a bigger country, do you think?
Actually.
Yeah.
And it's a safe country, so why are they leaving France to come to us? It's a safe country, France. It's in that lovely bit. It's in the European Union. Very safe.
Good morning. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into finances of the SNP. Searches are being carried out at a number of properties, including his home, where police have set up a cordon. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independent campaign fund. The SNP says it's fully cooperating with the investigation. Donald Trump says the only crime he's committed is fearlessly defending his nation against those who seek to destroy it. The former US president has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments during his 2016 election campaign. He claims he's a victim of election interference. A tick-borne virus which can cause meningitis has been detected by health officials. The UK Health Security Agency has found 3 possible cases of the virus in England since 2019, with the first confirmed case in Yorkshire last year. The infection can be asymptomatic and cause mild to severe illnesses such as encephalitis, where the brain swells to deadly levels. Invitations to the King's coronation feature the title Queen Camilla for the first time. The Queen Consort will be formally crowned alongside the new King and transition to her new title. The invite to Abbey Church of Westminster on the 6th of May will be sent to more than 2,000 guests. US President Joe Biden has confirmed he will not be attending, represented instead by the First Lady Jill Biden. TV, online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
With who are you again?
I'm Andrew Pearce.
To the point, here's Andrew Pearce.
That's
and I'm
Dawn
Dawn
Neeson.
Neeson. Now, Home Secretary Suella Braverman could face a legal challenge over her plan to house migrants on a barge at Portland Port.
The Bibby Stockholm vessel would accommodate more than 500 migrants at cost of taxpayers more than $20,000 a day. This is the idea of getting them out of hotels where it's costing £150 a day.
That's about 6 million, isn't it, or something
Well,
like that? 7 million?
it's too much.
Yes, all right. Right, now, let's talk now to the local Dorset Conservative MP, Richard Drax, for his view on the matter. Good morning, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. OK, so we have to do something with these migrants. Why doesn't the barge work for you?
Well, there's 2 areas of concern that we have. One is in the port itself, which is a highly, highly restricted area. You're going to have 500, we don't know who they are, if it's young men, in effect, a sort of quasi-prison, because they're only going to be allowed out on a bus. We don't know where the bus will go to. We don't know whether they're going to be dropped. We don't know whether someone will monitor them. We don't even know if they'll get back to the pickup point and get back to where they are incarcerated. Plus, of course, we have a very, very sensitive seaside town, which relies hugely on visitors and tourists for the summer trade, and we are concerned this could have a detrimental effect.
Richard, currently these people are in hotels, and those issues you raise would be issues where they are currently, and everyone agrees they shouldn't be in hotels. It's too expensive. They've got to move somewhere. Isn't the barge, at least, and I understand in Holland they used this barge for migrants before successfully, a better way of keeping these people securely?
Well, securely they won't be kept, because of course they will...
But they're not in hotels, though, are they?
Sorry, I missed that.
Well, they're not in hotels. They're not insecure in hotels either. They're not locked in their room in hotels.
No, they're not. And yes, there is a big issue here. But this port, as I've explained, with its highly restricted area, is going to have trouble enough to look after these migrants. And as I said, outside, there'll be no control over where they go, what they do in a very sensitive seaside town. There are other ports, other places, and you may accuse me of being a NIMBY, but this port is not an appropriate place. And I'm not just the only one saying this. We haven't even been consulted by anyone, or hardly anyone, on the consequences of this influx. And that in itself surprises me.
Richard, all we're hearing is not here, not right for here, you can't do this, it's wrong, etc., etc. So I'm sorry, it is a bit of NIMBYism going on here. So where do they go? What do we do with them?
Well, the solution is simple, although, of course, it hasn't been done. Proper reception centres have to be built, and they haven't been. And I would urge the government to get on with it as fast as they can, where asylum seekers can be located securely, looked after properly, and their cases validated or not. To distribute them around ships and barges all around the country in the short term, I understand there is a solution. It is not the medium to long-term solution for all the reasons we know. And there have been issues in hotels already, people disappearing, sexual assaults, violence, and all the rest of it. My concern is that on a barge, these issues will be magnified.
So, Richard, you're saying you wouldn't have a problem with a proper processing centre being built in your constituency?
Well, I'm not saying it should be built in my constituency. I don't know where it would be, but certainly a consultation by the government on where best to put reception centres should take place. Now, clearly, they're going to have to go somewhere, and wherever they go, they're going to get, I suspect, people are going to get upset. But this one that they've chosen, as I say, is unsuitable for the reasons I've given, and there's been absolutely no consultation on the effect this could have, quite apart from the support the migrants on board are inevitably going to need.
Can I ask you, Richard, do you know why they chose this port in your constituency?
I guess because it's a private one, because it bypasses planning consent. And the fact all the negotiations have been in private so far between the port and the Home Office negates the need to talk to Dorset Council, the health, the police. Me would be nice to know what's going on, rather than being told by people like you what is happening. That would, I thought, be the more courteous way and the more sensible way forward, but that's not how it's been done.
And the £3,000 we understand the government would pay per refugee to sweeten the pill, is that going to go to the private port or does that go to the local council?
We don't know. Good question. Is it going to pay? Is it going to pay for the healthcare? Is it going to pay for the policing? Is it going to pay for the dentists and the doctors? Is it going to pay for what? Who's going to get it? I mean, Dorset Council have had minimal conversation. I've just spoken to them this morning, about an hour ago. They were told, like I was a few days ago now, that this was coming. But since then, we've had no explanation as to who's coming. We think a barge is coming. We don't know who's going to be on the barge. And then when they are here, who in effect is going to be responsible for them outside the port. And as I say, I fear there'll be issues on board the barge in the port.
All right, that's Richard Drax. He's the Conservative MP for South Dorset. They appear to be making a bit of a pig's ear of this, Dawn.
You know what?
Not talking to the local MP first.
Exactly. It's why do they announce these things without actually talking to the people in the local
They told
area?
us they were going to do this thing with barges and boats without having found the barges and boats in the first place. Policy on the hoof.
It is, yeah.
That's what they're doing.
I wonder if just to get the headlines. We are seen to be doing something, but we're not actually doing anything.
It's just a month to go to the coronation. Dawn's invitation hasn't arrived. She's very disappointed. However, nor is mine, but you now know there is a reference at finally, official. She's going to be Queen Camilla and Charles's grandchildren, King... Who's going to be there? Prince...
King George is going to be the little...
He's going to be in the procession.
Yay! One of the pages. One of the pages, yeah. All right, for more, let's talk to the host of the Daily Express's Royal Roundup, Pandora Forsyth. Hello, Pandora. Good to see you. Right, Pandora, tell us a bit more about this. I mean, we'll have to curtsy. She's Queen Camilla.
Yeah, we kind of suspected this would happen. There'd be a period in between the late Queen's death where people would be getting used to a different Queen. Now, we do know the late Queen's request was for that Camilla to be called Queen Consort. I can imagine the conversation also happened, a few months afterwards, whether, she'd have wanted her to be Queen. So I imagine this was part of that plan. We suspected it, and now it's just confirmed it. And this, of course, will have made them both very happy. Camilla has been around for many, many years now, and they're celebrating their wedding anniversary actually this coming Sunday. I think their 18th wedding anniversary. So, of course, this will have brought much joy to them both, and I'm sure it's very significant for them.
Pandora, do you think that, there has been a backlash about people calling her Queen rather than Queen Consort or just Camilla? Mm-hmm. Do you think she will be upset by some of the reaction she's receiving to this story?
I think Camilla has been very much used to reaction that she's had over the years, whether that be positive or bad. And I think actually it's part of being, within the royal family. You have to expect that slightly with being on a public platform. So I have no doubt that she'll be aware of the reaction to it. But I think all her concentrations and efforts now will be going to supporting her husband, the king, and making sure that the weekend runs as smoothly as possible.
I think it's staggering still that this woman is now Her Majesty the Queen from the coronation, because when you think in the immediate aftermath of the death of Princess Diana, it's not unfair to say she was probably a candidate to be the most reviled woman in Britain.
I think she was very much aware of that, and I think it's taken many, many years for much of the public opinion to change. Some of it has changed, but of course, a few people's opinions are still very much the same. But I think the King will want this to be a new era, a new modern monarchy, and this is something obviously that they don't want to be brought up again and again, because it has been for so many years. So we shall see. On the weekend, we know that there have been protesters for when they do go around the royal family, not so much for that issue when they go to events, but more so for anti-monarchists, which I'm sure they have lots of reasons for that, not so much for the story on Diana.
All right, that's Pandora Forsyth from the Express's Royal Roundup podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
Right now, time now for another look through today's newspapers, and pleased to be joined again by the UK Director of Common Sense Society, the lovely Emma Webb, looking very gorgeous, spring-like and green down there. And you were a bit naughty earlier on, weren't you, to be honest with you? And former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Now, be a good boy on your best behaviour here. I think because we have been talking about the royals, and they are, as well as Donald Trump, on most of the papers this morning, in particular The Sun, our new Queen. So we're going to come to you first, Stephen. In the Daily Mail, all the details of the coronation. Are we excited?
Not really,
No.
to be perfectly honest. I'm sorry to be a bit of a grouch about this, but the thing that excites me is the invitation. When you get your invitation, you'll see it actually looks like a Clinton's card. It's covered in flowers all the way around, and it's all very green and very. It looks flowery. It doesn't look particularly regal. I want dignity, calm, detachment. I want this sort of the distance of the royalty. To actually, I don't want this to be all.
Well, it's showing his green credentials. There's even a cabbage on it.
I know.
Or the green man symbol.
Well, no, I was just
Very
going to say
Prince
that
Charles, exactly.
the green man, as you know, is like sort of Puck, Pan, Robin Hood, these strange woodland deities.
Yeah.
Is that really appropriate in a Christian country? I don't know.
But he's a man who's been banging on about the environment correctly and way ahead of his time for 40, 50 years.
Well, I think it's his geraniums tipped him off.
And he does have a nice chat to the plants, but I mean, you know, there's a bumblebee on it as well. What do you make it?
Cabbage?
And he wants
What's wrong with cabbages? What have you got against cabbages?
I grow cabbages, but I don't put them on invitation.
And he wants to appeal to younger people. You're a younger person, Emma, much younger than Stephen Pound, who's
most
quite
people
old
are
now.
Well, I actually think that I agree with Stephen in that I think that I don't like this. The modernisation of the monarchy, that it's almost become quite political. It feels like it needs to campaign for a constituency. It's seeking the love of the people. I want the monarchy to be this elevated, regal, transcendent, almost mystical thing. I would like for the coronation to really be focused on the fact that this is a divine sacrament, the anointing of the king. You know, I would like to see these really ancient traditions going back over 1,000 years to be in a modern context without feeling that it needs to change, it needs to be modern in some way. So I don't like that, but I am very excited for the coronation. And I think that the idea of making Camilla, Queen Camilla, yes, she is still Queen Consort, but, you know, she is a tough cookie. She's won me round. I like her. She's been really resilient in the face of a lot of public criticism, unlike some people in the royal family.
Yes.
And I think that she, you know, her relationship with Prince Charles, or King Charles now, yes, you know, the people really love Diana. She was the people's princess, and some people are still very sore about that, clearly, from the backlash that we've seen to this story. But the reality is that Charles and Camilla love each other, and they have loved each other for many, many decades. Yes, I completely agree with those who say that philandering is wrong. It's not becoming of a royal. The whole situation was a mess.
And
but the fact is they love each other.
And it took two.
Yes, it did take two, very much so, and I think that people are really hesitant to be critical of Diana for many reasons. So I think that it's a good thing that you know, Camilla is going to be described as queen, and I think that we should have a really truly traditional coronation. So I think that some of the stuff that Prince Charles is going to bring in, I'm probably not going to like too much.
It should be done in Norman French as well. I'll tell you a strange thing. As a past mayor of Ealing, I'm actually present. I give people their naturalisation certificates. We have a ceremony which takes place, you know, in every town hall. And everyone at the moment, there's a picture of the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, because until Charles is crowned, he's not actually the king of this guy, except in name. And it's very difficult to explain to people who are becoming British citizens after a long and arduous process and having to go through all these incredibly difficult questions about, you know, who was the last American president to be indicted, all those difficult questions. To say, there you are in front of a picture of the Queen. And so there's going to be thousands, if not 1 million pictures of the Queen are going to be thrown out in May, and all these new ones come in.
But just on the...
Which have cost quite a bit of money as well, haven't they?
8 million.
8 million, yeah. But for the historical record, being Queen Consort was not new, because if you go back to...
Oh, no, Queen Caroline of Brunswick.
Yeah, they were all known
and
as
Queen Charlotte
Consort.
of Mecklenburg.
Yeah, and Princess Mary, who was married to George...
Of Teck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were all Queen Consort until the coronation.
Yeah.
So it's just keeping in line with history. Yeah. Exactly.
But it's the money. I'm just wondering, you know, I get the tradition and the pomp and ceremony, and it attracts tourists and everything.
Is the word, I think.
But it's going to cost a lot of money.
It's worth
Do you think the public has the
worth
stomach?
money. Absolutely, it's worth
worldwide media attention that we focus on Great Britain PLC.
This is a matter of national pride. If we can't have a good coronation, a good anointing of our monarch, then what are we as a nation? I think that the British people, even at a time, because if you remember that the previous, you know, Queen Elizabeth, she was crowned. And her coronation was at a time when there was still rationing.
Yeah.
These things are important. They're important in a way that is intangible, that is not material, and nations need those sorts of things.
And I bet the streets will be thronged with 1 million people.
There will certainly be thronged, but, you know, not everybody. Some people just be there sort of vicarious interest, and you just, you know, some people be saying off with their heads. But look, I don't think there's a read across to the coronation of the late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. That was a sombre, dignified, post-war black and white occasion, and it was very, very moving. I was about 4 years old. I can just remember bits of it.
But it still had the traditional pomp and pageantry, and that's what I would like to see in this.
Yeah, but your fundamental point is, what does it say about this? Is this about as a country? I think what it says about this, it means we're looking backwards. It means that we're actually looking backwards into the past, into this mystical world of pomp and ceremony.
Well, hang on.
That's no bad thing.
You've just been moaning about the invitation.
I know.
That shows them looking forward. It's a modern invitation
Even
as opposed
more
to going
confused.
backwards.
Confused.
You can't have it both ways, Stephen.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
yes,
think
of
we
course you
could
can.
do with a
You're a
little bit
former
of
MP.
this
You're a politician. Of course you can have it both ways.
No, I think you're confusing me with the Liberals.
Yes, right.
Right, should we move on?
Yes.
Before we start to punch up here.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Not for the first time.
This is another tradition.
Rupert
that
Murdoch getting married.
I'm actually going to talk about St George's Day. And this is your story, Emma, isn't it?
Lord, save us from these people. This is an Oxford college, Magdalen College, has cancelled its traditional St George's Day feast and instead is having an Eid dinner on St George's Day. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an Eid dinner at an Oxford college. The problem is that Eid is on the 21st, St George's Day is on the 23rd, and they're having it on the 23rd when they could have had it on the 22nd. So they're actually choosing one tradition, one religious tradition, over another.
So they're making a statement.
And you have to see this in a broader context as well. We've just seen Oxford Council wanting to sell off pieces of classical and biblical art. There is this constant disparaging of the Christian heritage and Christian foundations of our institutions. It's a sort of ingratitude, but it's also a kind of vandalism. I think that there's an element of wanting to sort of hurt people over this. And so rightly, I think a lot of people are very annoyed about this. And as Calvin Robinson, GBNews' very own Calvin Robinson, has pointed out, because this year St George's Day falls within Eastertide, actually, according to the Christian calendar, it's actually been moved to the Monday. So even though they chose to put it on traditionally St George's Day on the 23rd, Magdalen College could undo their wrong by choosing to have the St George's Day feast on the Monday instead.
But we wouldn't be talking about Magdalen College if they hadn't deliberately upset
But
people's
I wonder, it's
sensibilities.
patronising nonsense. I was talking to a couple of friends. I mean, I have huge admiration for my Muslim friends who actually fast throughout the whole of the day, during Ramadan, and then, they have a date and a glass of water at iftar. I have a huge respect for it. Both of them said the same thing to me. It's patronising nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is there a great upswell of opinion from people, from Muslim students at Magdalen who want to have this? I rather doubt it. This is somebody somewhere just trying to be sort of super politically correct and actually ending up annoying a lot of people, including the Muslims.
But this is actually not about having an Eid dinner. As I say, there's nothing wrong with them choosing to have an Eid dinner. It's the fact that they've chosen to do it on a day that displaces, because St George's Day is not just a Christian festival, obviously, it's a Saints' Day, but it's also a national holiday. And so they've chosen to do it on this particular day rather than actually on Eid. And I think that's the thing that's annoying people.
Yeah, just in defence of Magdalen College, they do make the point they've never had a tradition of staging a St George's Day celebration.
Well, I'm sorry.
However,
they've done it for the last 4 years before the COVID. They had it every single April the 23rd.
Thank you for pointing that out.
And just a quickie, why is it OK to have St Andrew's Day? Obviously, Andrew's a fantastic name. St Patrick's Day, and we all have parties, and we all celebrate and fly the flags, etc., etc.
St David's Day.
St David's Day, of course. Why is St George's Day
because somehow English nationalism is perceived as racist, and that's not fair. Because the racist, what was that party called, the English National Party, seized the flag of St George as their motto, in the same way the Labour Party, by the way, nicked the red rose from the Wars of the Roses. But that's, isn't that what it's all about? We think it's been hijacked by
If that's the case, they should be aware that St George was actually either from Syria or possibly Turkey. No one's quite sure.
Do you think
this happens every single St George's Day, isn't it? People will point out, St George was from everywhere.
Yes, I know.
Yes. He was a migrant.
And by the way, I don't think he really
migrant.
did slay a dragon.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on.
I don't want to be controversial.
You're saying dragons aren't real?
Yeah, I do believe in dragons. I'm a fan of Harry Potter.
Tread softly, for you tread on my dream.
Hogwarts School.
Yeah.
I'd love to have gone to Hogwarts School.
Do not tickle a sleeping dragon.
I'd love to have gone to Hogwarts
What is the motto of Hogwarts?
I'm being asked what house I've been in. I would not have been in Slytherin, people are asking me. I would have been in Gryffindor with Harry Potter.
We're back to auditioning for a pub quiz team.
I wouldn't have been in the Quidditch team, by the way. I'd have been making the tea.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I love J.K. Rowling, never watched a film or read a book.
Did you? He would have been in the. He'd have been in Hufflepuff.
No, I would have been with Draco Malfoy in
Slytherin. Slytherin is the wicked house.
Yeah, but we had more fun.
Is that the
Yeah.
Harry Potter equivalent of the Labour Party?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
right.
it's Harry Potter equivalent of reform.
I think we've got time for one quick story, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this one. The heartbreaking news, and they said it wouldn't last, that Rupert Murdoch has called off his engagement.
Oh! He only got engaged 2 weeks ago.
I know. They said it wouldn't
Age
last. It didn't last
92.
that long.
Yeah, but there's been a conscious uncoupling because of her evangelical views. I mean, I have to say...
I think there's more to it than that.
Well, I
trust
think,
me.
but I think, what's her name, Anne Leslie Smith is a very, very interesting woman. She was a dental hygienist. She released a record of country music. Got
Well,
sued.
the reason that was given is that she's uncomfortable with being in the public eye, rather than they're actually aligned on their religious views. It seems
posing
judging
with
by the
her
story.
£2 million engagement ring with Rupert.
But it's extraordinary. I don't know if you were in the House that day when Rupert Murdoch
million.
gave evidence to a select committee when some cheap comedian pied him, and Wendy Deng.
That was wife number 3, or was it wife number 4?
And I think she was roundabout. It was certainly an even number.
Yeah.
But she said, "Hands off my Rupert," and she leapt like a guided missile right the way across the bed.
She did. It was
I was
brilliant.
sitting. It was a fantastic, and I actually felt sorry for this ghastly little comedian who had managed to smuggle in a plate of shaving foam.
I wonder what his children think about him not getting married for a 5th time. I wonder if they're happy. Or was this wife number 6?
This was number 5, was it?
Yeah.
1, 2,
92
3, 4,
years
5?
old.
Surely
I think
by
you see
this
the
point
light.
it's probably become the status quo in their family.
But he did say this is the last one. I said, absolutely right, mate.
93, well, he's going well. He's still...
And she said she's 66, so she's almost halfway through her life.
Yeah. I think there's more to it than her evangelical views and her reluctance to be in the public eye. But I'm not going to dwell on it in public. But I suspect by the weekend, the Sunday papers, we know what they're like, they'll probably reveal a little more.
But there is talk of a prenup that wasn't too comfortable.
I don't know. They don't talk to me about these things. I did meet Rupert
but you
Murdoch
talked to
with
them.
Jerry Hall, and they seemed a really, really happy couple. And she was fabulous.
She's very fabulous.
Glamorous, tall, funny.
Aren't you describing Dawn?
Thank you very much, Smitty. You can come back, actually.
Not sure you can.
That's not what you said 5 minutes ago.
Oh, what am I dealing with here? Didn't Rupert Murdoch say there was an issue with the fact that Jerry Hall smoked and drank too much?
Well,
Don't you think he might have realised that before they actually
She's
got
from
married?
Texas. What do you expect?
He's a Fleet Street legend. Surely that comes with the territory.
Yeah, well, actually, when I worked for the Times for 17 years in the building, it was a dry office.
Really?
Oh.
Pretty much. Yeah, it was, pretty much.
How did you cope?
I went to the pub. There was one right around the corner.
Is Rupert Murdoch evangelical as well, then?
Well, he's a Christian. I don't know much about his religion. I've talked to him from time to time, but I didn't talk about religion.
I don't normally walk past the pub.
In the papers, it says that they were aligned on their religious
thought that
views,
was
and
right.
that's the reason why they were
came
such a good
together.
couple.
Yeah.
It seems to be quite an amicable and sort of
Perhaps
respectful
he's
separation.
just realised at 92 what's the point of getting married again.
But they love each other. Emma is back on the market, though, love. You know, just in case.
I loved the fact that he said that he hoped it would be his last relationship
over
the age of 90.
I think he's a great man, and he's done wonders for newspapers. He saved the Times and the Sunday Times and
destroyed the unions.
Very, very. He didn't destroy them. He just helped put them in their place with that marvellous woman, Margaret Thatcher.
Moving on.
Should we move on? I think, actually, on that note, the serious news story of the day, we've actually come to the end of the show.
Oh, it's been lovely being with you.
You've really enjoyed it, haven't you?
I have enjoyed it very much.
No, it's really fun.
That was Stephen Pounds. That was lovely, Emma.
Emma, yeah.
You're coming back, aren't you?
Yeah.
I love you.
You're not Stephen.
No, actually, he was quite nice to me. He can come back. You can't come back.
All right.
No. Right, OK, well...
That would be interesting. We'll empty chair, Andrew.
Right, well...
Sometimes it's
I won't be back if I can't find my mobile phone, because it's gone missing.
Oh, right, yeah, actually, it's probably sitting on it. Right, coming up next is GB News Live with Mark Longhurst. This is To The Point with Andrew and Dawn. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See you.
And damp day for many
Somebody's
of us
got
today.
That would have been mad, doesn't it?
That was fun.
I just sat, just in case he was sitting on this thing. I was tempted to bring it.
Moving in from the west. Now, these weather fronts will clear through during the next 24 hours, followed by a showery day tomorrow, and then fine weather returns for the Easter weekend. But for many of us, it is a damp afternoon. Outbreaks of rain continuing. Much of this rain is light and patchy across central and western England, Wales into Scotland and Northern Ireland. Brighter skies follow for western Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it stays